we had talking about finding differences. We had done a deal. It was for a chain of salons, and the buyer was acquiring the business based upon the number of seats for the salon in the total number. Okay. And then what happened was, turns out the seller had managed two sets of books. They had one set of books for their internals, and they had another set that they used for the external. So they showed them essentially both. And then at the end, there was a promissory note. They didn't want to pay the promissory note post-closing, and they said, aha, you had two sets of books. You defrauded us. Had we known that you were cooking the books, we wouldn't have bought this mess, and that you're a train wreck and we're not going to pay you under the note. Litigation ensued. And what was interesting in the deposition, it basically asked the question to the buyer, why did you buy this business? What was your algorithm, if you will, to determine the value? It was the number of seats. So fortunately, the judge said there wasn't any proof that they were really misleading anybody, but to the extent that they were, it was irrelevant because the number of seats didn't change, and that was the method they used to value the business. And it took 2 years to get to that point. So I digress.
Wow.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But representations and warranties. The purchase agreement shall contain mutual representation and warranties about the, typical of a transaction of this size and nature. And then you're going to have remedies for any breach. That's standard. For condition preceding. Now, there's a lot of things that will occur before the closing, and the transaction is going to be completely contingent upon successful review of the finances, the operations of the company, this is all subject to the satisfaction of all the conditions preceding, and that's critical, obviously. Successful review of the financial transactions. Then we have regulatory approval. I was going to digress on another deal, but this is really important. Fully contingent upon successful review of the financial transactions. And we were asked to get involved in a case where a company had bought another company. They messed up with the due diligence. They didn't do a UCC search to see if there was any liens on the assets. The lawyer involved just didn't do a UCC search. So multiple years later, when the buyer went to sell the company to another acquirer, the new acquiring company discovered that there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of liens outstanding, tax liens. It was a mess. And so they wanted to bring an action against the other counsel, and we were asked if we wanted to, participate. We did not pass. But it was all because they didn't run a UCC search, and it was totally undiscovered. They didn't know. And so bottom line is, weird things can happen, and things that I would never expect somebody not to run a UCC search. And I'm sure, Nate, you would make sure that happened,
Always.
Yeah.
And I recommend everyone that's engaging in an M&A transaction, north of $50,000, you need to have an attorney involved. You need to have your own transaction attorney. We always recommend, I think there's only been 2 or 3 deals out of 3,000 where we didn't have a transaction attorney, involved with the closing and the escrow. I always recommend there be a UCC lien search. And your attorney will cover all those bases. That's where someone can engage someone like you, Manny. That's an important part of this.
Well, and it's also a very easy thing to do. All you have to do is go to the Secretary of State where they're either an LLC or an incorporation, and you basically do a lien search. You just type it in. You can do it online. It takes 5 minutes.
The same website you go to search for the actual incorporate, like whether the corporation or LLC is an active entity. That same,
exactly.
State Corporation Commission website or every state's got them. They're all online, and I think they're all free to search. You just got to go. Some of them may require like an email, but usually I think not.
Yeah, like Texas often requires you to set up a little account, but it's like insignificant cost, a couple of bucks to do a quick search. But so I'd recommend that. But those types of things can happen. I've only seen that once in 35 years, but that was weird. Regulatory approvals, obviously, that If there's any regulatory approvals that are necessary, you're going to get them.
Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications about new videos and interviews. And introduce yourself in the comments. Are you a buyer or a seller?